They laughed when I walked into class, loud, sharp, careless. Time traveler from Fallujah, someone snorted. Another voice behind me. That shirt looks like it barely survived a garage fire. I didn't say a word. Not when they pointed. Not when they leaned in and whispered like I couldn't hear them. I just stood there in the doorway holding the strap of my backpack, wearing the same shirt my mother died in. Or rather, what was left of it. Torn at the shoulder, faded down the back, a rip along the collar frayed like it had been caught in something unforgiving. Because it had. And no one here had any idea. Not yet. It had rained that morning. The kind of soft, steady rain that doesn't wash anything away, just makes the world feel heavier. My room was cold, dim. I sat on the edge of the bed with the shirt folded in my lap, staring at the buttons. Most were intact. One near the hem had melted a little. There was still sand in the seams, still the faintest scent of oil like the hangar where she worked. If I closed my eyes, I could hear her humming low out of tune, but always the same song. I slipped it on. It hung loose on me. Too long in the arms, too wide in the chest, but I rolled the sleeves and buttoned it to the top. There were only two things I had left from her. This shirt, and the letter I wasn't ready to open. Mom was First Lieutenant Melissa Tran, combat engineer, United States Marine Corps. She wasn't supposed to be in Syria that week, but she volunteered. She always did. She wrote once, "It's not about being the strongest, it's about being the one who stays standing after others fall." The last time I saw her, she had grease on her cheek and a ponytail tucked under her cap. She hugged me too tight and whispered something in Vietnamese I didn't fully understand. Now I think it meant be brave when it's hard. I didn't plan to wear the shirt to school. I didn't wake up looking for attention or sympathy or some big emotional moment. I wore it because it was November 11th Veterans Day and because my mother wouldn't get to wear it again. That felt like enough reason. On the bus, nobody said anything, not directly. But I felt it. The glances. The phones angled just right for pictures. The two girls 2 seats behind me whispering and laughing. I turned my face to the window and focused on the droplets streaking the glass. I remembered what Mom once told me. They only laugh when they don't understand. They only mock when something touches a nerve they don't want to feel. Still hurt, though. At school, it got worse. First period, one kid asked if I was trying to join the ROTC. I ignored him. Second period, someone dropped a fake dog tag on my desk with a sticky note. "Your fashion sense has PTSD." I didn't flinch. By the time lunch rolled around, I just wanted to make it through the day. I sat in my usual spot, the edge of the cafeteria near the vending machines, close enough to hear everything, far enough that no one sat with me. That had become the routine. Halfway through my sandwich, a group passed by. One of the girls, pretty popular, wearing expensive shoes and confident, slowed down as she passed. She looked me up and down and said, "Thrift store vibe? Or are you just apologizing for surviving?" Her friends laughed. Loud. Ugly. Like they needed to fill the room with their ignorance just to feel safe. I didn't look up, didn't respond, didn't blink. I just placed my sandwich down and pressed my fingers to the shirt's buttons. The top one was chipped, just like the one in the crate. I thought that was the worst of it. Until 6th period. History class. Mr. Danner's room. Always smells like chalk and old paper. I was 5 minutes early. I stepped inside, and everything changed. Because there, standing in the doorway backlit by the hallway lights, her uniform pressed to perfection medals gleaming on her chest, was a woman I'd never seen before. A United States Marine. Real. Present. Commanding. The room went silent. Mr. Danner stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. Students froze mid-conversation. The woman scanned the room, calm, measured. Then she said loud enough for every word to cut clean through the air. "Who here is the daughter of First Lieutenant Melissa Tran?" The entire class turned toward me. I felt my throat tighten. My chest thudded once hard. And somehow I stood. I raised my hand. And everything else disappeared. She was the loudest person in the kitchen. That's what I remember most, not her uniform, not the rules, not the way she could make a bed with corners sharp enough to cut you. Just her laugh. Big, honest, totally unfiltered. Like she never cared who was listening. That laugh filled the house on Sunday mornings. Usually when the eggs were burning or when I spilled juice on her after trying to help. I always felt clumsy. She always acted like I was brilliant. Combat engineers solve problems, she'd say, even when those problems are spilled orange juice. She wore flannel shirts when she wasn't deployed, but at least once a week, even on leave, she'd slip into something with a Marine Corps patch. Gotta remind the house who pays the mortgage, she'd joke. But one night before her last deployment, she folded that green shirt, the one I'm wearing now, and said, This one stays with you." I didn't ask why. I just nodded. The day she left, we stood outside the terminal. Wind tugged at her ponytail. Her duffel bag looked like it weighed more than she did. She kissed my forehead twice quick, like she didn't want to get caught lingering. Then she held my face with both hands. "If anything happens," she said, "I need you to remember something." I thought she was going to say, "I love you," or "be strong," or something generic. But she didn't. She said, "People will forget the mission. They'll forget the headlines. But don't let them forget me laughing in the kitchen, okay? Don't let them forget I lived." That was the last thing she said to me in person. After the funeral, I didn't speak for a week. I didn't cry either, not then. I just sat at the dinner table in her empty chair, eating cereal out of her mug because it still smelled like cinnamon and lemon-scented soap. People brought food. People sent cards. Some said things like she was a hero. Others said she knew what she signed up for. I hated that line the most. No one signs up to leave a daughter behind. School changed after that. I came back 3 weeks later, hair tied back, eyes hollow. Teachers avoided eye contact. Friends didn't know what to say. One of them, Alicia, used to walk home with me every day. After the funeral, she started crossing the street instead. Said her mom didn't want her around that kind of grief. I understood. But I still watched her walk away. The Marines came once 2 months after the burial, brought a box. Inside one folded flag, one commendation, and the shirt. Just the shirt. The edges were burned, the collar torn. I held it to my face and sobbed so hard my chest hurt. It was all that came back in one piece. Back in the present, the hallway outside Mr. Danner's classroom was deathly quiet. I walked behind the Marine officer, my legs stiff, heart beating like a slow drum in my ears. She introduced herself as Captain Leona Briggs. Tall, black boots polished. Face unreadable, but not unkind. We passed the science wing. 2 kids leaned out of a classroom, eyes wide, whispering. I caught the word military, and that's her before the door closed. We reached the front office. The secretary's mouth dropped open, but she didn't say anything. Captain Briggs nodded toward the small conference room. "In here." I stepped inside. Fluorescent lights, old books, framed photo of last year's principal on the wall, and a sealed envelope on the table. "Just sitting there." She pulled out a chair and motioned for me to sit. Then she sat across from me and said gently, "Your mother gave me that envelope 3 days before the blast." I stared at it. My fingers twitched. She told me, "Don't give it to her at the funeral. Don't give it to her in a hospital. Give it to her when she wears the shirt. She'll know what it means by then." My throat closed. Captain Briggs slid the envelope forward. Handwritten on the front in all caps block letters, just like Mom used on grocery lists. "For Mai, when you're strong enough to remember." I couldn't speak. I just touched the edge of the envelope. It was soft from age, but sealed tight. She carried it in her front pocket, Briggs added, right above her heart. I nodded barely, then whispered, "What happened that day?" She paused. Her eyes flickered the way people look when they've replayed something 1,000 times. "There was a school near Aleppo. Civilian evac didn't finish in time. We got pinned down. She covered 2 kids with her body, got them out. She swallowed hard. And then she went back. One more. That's when it hit. I closed my eyes. I could feel the seams of the shirt against my skin, warm, familiar, like her hand on my shoulder during storms. She was the best I ever served with, Briggs whispered. Tactical, fierce, brave, but more than that, she was your mom, and she loved you more than anything on this planet. Silence. Then there's a ceremony outside. We'd like you to come. I opened my eyes. What kind of ceremony? Briggs stood, straightened her jacket. The kind where we stop pretending silence is respect and start saying her name. I looked at the envelope one more time, then stood too. Not because I was ready, but because she would have done the same. We stepped out of the conference room and the hallway hit me like a wave. People everywhere. Students who hadn't made eye contact with me in months were now pressed to lockers, standing on tiptoes, holding phones, all pointed toward me. The shirt felt tighter now, heavier. I tried to fix the sleeve, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Captain Briggs walked beside me like a wall calm, unwavering. Her boots echoed off the tile. So did mine. Someone whispered my name. Someone else gasped. But no one laughed. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, and I wasn't sure if I liked it. We passed the trophy case. My reflection looked back at me, hollow eyes, baggy sleeves, messy braid. Not the kind of daughter you imagine when you hear the word hero. Outside the glass doors, I could see the football field. And the flags. Dozens of them. Small American flags lining the perimeter, fluttering in the wind like the sky was breathing through them. Rows of folding chairs. A podium. A large black and white banner stretched across the bleachers. In memory of LT Melissa Tran, service, sacrifice, legacy. My knees buckled for a second. I had seen her name carved into marble. I had seen it printed in obituaries. But I'd never seen it honored in bold capital letters like that stretched across the sky. As we walked toward the doors, Principal Reynolds appeared. He looked awkward, like a man who realized he had underestimated something big. "My," he said, clearing his throat. "I want to say..." But Captain Briggs cut in smoothly. "We'll begin shortly." He stepped aside. I didn't mind. There wasn't anything he could say that would have reached me anyway. The wind outside was crisp. Leaves scraped across the pavement. The bleachers were packed. Students, teachers, a few parents, news cameras. At the base of the flagpole stood 4 Marines in full dress blues. Next to them, a woman I recognized from the local paper, Congresswoman Rivera, holding a plaque. Briggs nodded toward the center of the field. "This way." We walked across the grass. I could hear the murmurs ripple through the crowd, sniffling, some quiet sobs, but mostly silence, the kind that isn't empty but full of everything no one knows how to say. We reached the podium. Briggs stepped forward. Her voice was firm, clear, the voice of someone who'd commanded troops, but also carried caskets. "Good afternoon, students and faculty of Rivergate High. We are gathered here today, not just to honor a fallen Marine, but to remember what it means when we say service. Not the word, the life behind it." She glanced over at me. First Lieutenant Melissa Tran was a combat engineer. She deployed 3 times, built bridges under enemy fire, cleared paths through minefields so civilians could escape. Her tone softened. But before all of that, she was a daughter, a student, a girl who sat where you sit, who walked these halls, who laughed too loud in the cafeteria and snuck extra cookies from the lunch line. Laughter rippled gently. Briggs continued. She wore this very shirt during her final mission, the mission where she gave her life not for medals, not for attention, but to shield 3 children and a fellow Marine from an IED blast. Silence again. Then she turned toward me. And today, her daughter Mai-Tran wears that shirt. She came here not seeking sympathy, not looking for applause, but simply to remember her mother in the only way she could. She stepped aside. Congresswoman Rivera took the mic. On behalf of the United States House of Representatives and the families who live because of what Melissa did, I present this citation and this posthumous Silver Star to her daughter, who reminds us that legacy is not just what we leave behind, but who we raise. She handed me the plaque, then the folded flag. I held them both. They were heavier than they looked. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when the Marines saluted. Not when the crowd stood in unison. Not even when the band played taps. I just stood there, the wind pressing the shirt to my skin as if the fabric itself remembered. After the ceremony, people approached me. Some shook my hand. Some whispered thank you. One boy from my math class, the same one who called my shirt PTSD chic, looked at me like he didn't know how to be a human anymore. I didn't know he said, barely audible. I nodded once. It was enough. Mr. Danner, my history teacher, stepped forward last. He looked at the flag in my arms, then at me. My dad served in Vietnam, he said quietly. He didn't talk about it much, but he kept his jacket in the closet. I never understood why until now. He paused. Thank you for bringing her with you. I smiled, but it barely reached my eyes. When I got home that night, I placed the Silver Star next to the photo on our mantle. It caught the light just right. Then I pulled out the envelope from my backpack. Still sealed, still waiting. I wasn't ready, but I was close. I waited until the house was quiet. The lights off, the heater humming. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows like someone pacing the sidewalk. My backpack sat on the floor beside me, the shirt still folded inside, faintly smelling of dust and old fire. The letter was in my hands. It felt lighter than I remembered. Or maybe I had finally grown strong enough to carry it. I peeled the flap open slowly, careful not to rip the edges. Inside was a single sheet of paper, hand-folded, yellowed slightly with time. No creases except the 3 neat lines from where she had folded it herself. The handwriting was hers, tight, clean, all caps. I took a deep breath and began to read. Mai, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. I wanted to make it back. I wanted to see you graduate. I wanted to yell too loud at your wedding and kiss your kids on the forehead and tell them stories you wouldn't want me to tell. But war doesn't care what we want. It only cares what we're willing to give. I stopped for a second, swallowed, my eyes blurred. Then I kept reading. I know this shirt isn't much. It's probably dirty, probably smells like fuel, but I wore it that day for a reason. It's the one I put on when I needed to be strong, not just for me, but for others. I wore it when I built a bridge under fire. I wore it when I helped evacuate a school. And I wore it when I held a little girl's hand who couldn't find her mother. Tears started slipping down my cheeks, not the loud kind, the silent kind that just fall steady like they've been waiting. If they gave you this, then something went wrong. But if you're wearing it, it means you're still here. And I need you to know, that's enough. You don't have to be me. You don't have to be strong every day. But if you ever need to feel me close, wear the shirt. It's ugly. It's torn, but so is grief, and both still hold together if you wear them right. I laughed softly. It cracked like dry paper in my throat. Even now she made jokes, even from the other side of the world, from another lifetime. I loved you the first time I heard your heartbeat. I loved you when you spilled orange juice on my rank patch. I loved you when you screamed at me for deploying again, and I love you now wherever I am. Never let anyone laugh you out of remembrance, and never think silence means forgetting. Say my name sometimes, not for me, for you. Because you are my story now. Love always, Mom. I held the paper against my chest and sat in the dark for a long time. No music, no talking, just the steady rhythm of memory, the kind that pulses not through ears, but through skin. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up writing in my journal, drawing little sketches of her boots, her laugh, her terrible pancakes. I wrote down every memory I hadn't spoken aloud since she died, as if I was afraid they'd disappear if I didn't trap them somewhere. By morning, I'd filled 7 pages, and then I stared at my reflection in the mirror, not to fix my hair, but to look myself in the eyes. Later that morning, I returned to school. Same halls, same lockers, same classmates who once turned away. Only now, they turned toward me. Some smiled, some nodded. One girl with dyed pink hair touched her heart as I walked by. I didn't wear the shirt that day, but I didn't need to, because something inside me had shifted, not just because of the ceremony, not just because of the crowd, but because of the letter. Because for the first time since the funeral, I felt like I wasn't walking with a hole in my chest. I was walking with a name, and that name had weight, and pride, and purpose. When Captain Briggs met me at the front gate, she didn't speak right away. She just handed me a small velvet box. Inside a lapel pin. Gold. Simple. Marine Corps emblem. Below it engraved on a tiny strip of brass, daughter of LT, Melissa Tran. I clutched it in my palm. There's another ceremony, she said. District-wide. Veterans Day weekend, 10 schools, thousands of students, families, press. I blinked. Why are you telling me? Briggs smiled just a little. Because we need someone to speak. I opened my mouth to protest. I'm not. She held up a hand. You don't have to decide now, but your mom's letter, it wasn't just for you. It was for all of us. We forget. We turn away. We move on. She paused. But sometimes it takes someone young, someone brave to make us look back. She handed me a card, her personal number. Think about it. And then she walked away. That night I reread the letter. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the same box where the flag and medal now rested. Next to it I laid the shirt. The tear at the shoulder still gaped open, but it didn't feel broken anymore. It felt honored, like a flag still flying even after the wind tears through. The stage looked too big for me. Too wide, too official, like it belonged to someone older, someone who knew how to speak in front of crowds. Not a girl who used to eat lunch behind the vending machines, hiding grief behind peanut butter sandwiches. But there I was, standing center field at the Veterans Day District ceremony. 10 schools in attendance, rows upon rows of students in metal folding chairs, flags lining the perimeter like guardians, a full brass band waiting at attention, TV cameras, teachers, families, and me, wearing the shirt, cleaned, pressed, still torn at the shoulder. I didn't fix that part. Some things weren't meant to be hidden. When Captain Briggs called my name over the PA system, the field quieted so fast it felt like the earth held its breath. I walked up the steps. Slow. One hand on the rail, the other holding the small card with my speech, though I wasn't sure I'd use it. The podium was taller than I expected. I had to adjust the mic. And then it was just me. The wind. The silence. The name they had all heard in announcements but never really seen. I looked down at my notes, then folded them in half, and looked up. My name is Mai Tran, I began. My voice didn't shake. Not yet. My mother was First Lieutenant Melissa Tran. She served 3 tours as a Marine combat engineer. She built bridges, she cleared mines, she kept people alive. A pause, a breath. But to me, she made loud pancakes on Sundays. She hummed Bon Jovi while she changed the oil in our car. She called me Tough Cookie when I scraped my knees. Soft laughter, the good kind. And then, one day she didn't come home. The wind stirred the flags behind me. I didn't talk about her for a long time. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I didn't think anyone wanted to hear about a mother who died in a place they couldn't pronounce. A lump rose in my throat, but I pushed through. I wore her shirt to school on Veterans Day, just once. I didn't expect anything. I didn't say a word, and some people laughed. I looked straight into the crowd, but then something happened. The Marines showed up, not to protect me, but to remind everyone that service doesn't end when the uniform is folded. Sometimes it shows up in a cafeteria. Sometimes it walks through a hallway. Sometimes it wears a torn sleeve. I paused again. The shirt I'm wearing was the last thing that came back from Syria. It smells like sand. The buttons are cracked. But it carried her through the last moment of her life, and it carried me through the worst moment of mine. The crowd was silent. Not bored, not restless. Silent like reverence. I told them about the letter. About the line she wrote, "Grief is ugly and torn, but it still holds together if you wear it right." About the way I used to wish for something more, a jacket dog tags a flag case with a pristine medal, but how I now understood that memory lives in what survives, even if it's stained, even if it's laughed at, even if it's barely held together. I looked toward the front row, saw my principal standing with his hand over his heart. Captain Briggs beside him, stone-faced, proud. My mom didn't want to be remembered for how she died. She wanted to be remembered for how she lived. I took a final breath. So today I'm not here to speak for every soldier. I can't do that. But I am here to say this behind every name on a plaque. There's someone like me, a daughter, a son, a family, still learning how to walk forward in a world that feels different now. I look down at the podium, then back at the crowd. And if you see someone wearing something that looks strange, maybe don't laugh, maybe ask. You might be looking at someone carrying a story you don't know. The wind picked up again, lifting the edge of the shirt. And if you ever forget their names, let someone like me remind you. I stepped back. The silence held. Then someone, I think it was a janitor from one of the other schools, began to clap. Not fast, not loud, but steady. One by one, others joined in. Teachers, veterans, students, until the whole field stood. Not like a pep rally, not like a standing ovation, but like something sacred had just been spoken aloud and needed to be honored. Captain Briggs met me halfway down the steps. She didn't say a word, just touched the torn shoulder of the shirt once lightly, like someone blessing a flag. After the ceremony, dozens of people approached me. One woman handed me a photo of her husband, a Vietnam vet. "He would have loved your mother," she said. A boy from the rival high school said, "I didn't know daughters could be warriors too." A teacher from Lincoln High whispered, "You reminded me of my sister. She didn't come home either." That night I sat on the porch holding the folded flag again. It didn't feel like a weight anymore. It felt like a legacy, a bridge. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was on the other side of it. I felt like I was the bridge now, between who she was and what comes next. The world didn't change overnight. The lockers still jammed. The cafeteria still smelled like ketchup and exhaustion. The announcements were still too loud. The bells still rang 5 minutes too early. But something invisible had shifted. Not in the school and how it looked at me, and maybe in how I looked back. The Monday after the district ceremony, I walked through the front doors and heard something I hadn't heard in a long time. Silence. Not the awkward avoid eye contact silence from before, but a stillness, a kind of pause, as if the hallway itself wanted to make space. I wasn't wearing the shirt that day. I didn't need to. People remembered anyway. Carlos from chemistry nodded at me. The girl who once posted a meme about my war aesthetic stepped aside to hold the door open. Even Ms. Lennox, the English teacher who once wrote on my essay, "Too dramatic, try realism," smiled gently and said, "Thank you for sharing your story." I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "You're welcome." It felt new. Not heavy, not light. Just new. At lunch, I walked to my usual corner where the noise couldn't find me, but the seat wasn't empty. Misha, the girl with the headphones, was already sitting there. 2 trays on the table, one pushed gently in my direction. "I didn't know what you liked," she said without looking up. "So I just got fries." I smiled. "Fries are good." Carlos joined us 5 minutes later, then 2 more. By the end of the week, our corner wasn't a corner anymore. It was a table. That Friday, the bulletin board outside the main office changed. A giant title stretched across it in red and blue ink, "Names We Remember." Underneath were photos. Parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, all connected to someone in the school, all with names, branches, dates, stories. I found hers quickly. First Lieutenant Melissa Tran, U.S. Marine Corps, KIA Syria, mother of my Tran. Someone had added a small gold star sticker in the corner of her frame. No one asked who. It didn't matter. Mr. Holcomb, the janitor, found me near the vending machines later that day. He held a dustpan in one hand and a folded paper in the other. "I knew your mom," he said, voice low, almost like a secret. "Different unit, same region. She once gave up her cot so a rookie could sleep. Took the floor herself. Said comfort didn't mean much when others were hurting." I stared. He looked down almost shy. "I never told anyone that. Felt like it wasn't my place. But after hearing you speak..." He paused. Then slowly he raised his hand and saluted. My throat closed, but I saluted back. Letters started coming in. One from a family in Kentucky. "Your mother saved our cousin's life in Iraq years ago. We never knew her name until now." One typed in all caps, "I was one of the kids she shielded. I was 7. I'm 13 now. I go to school. I play guitar. I'm alive. Because of her. Thank you." One from a woman who used to serve beside her in California. "She made the worst coffee in the Corps, but the best decisions." Each one said the same thing in 100 different ways. We didn't forget. We just didn't know who to thank. Until now. Even Emily, the girl who once mocked me in the hallway, sat beside me one day in the library. She didn't say much, but she pulled out a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil and placed it on the table without a word. That was her version of "I'm sorry." And honestly, it was enough. One morning I found a small package in my locker. No name, no return address. Inside was a military challenge coin etched with the Marine Corps emblem. On the back, "Service begins with memory." I keep it in my pocket now, not as a talisman, just a reminder. Of her. Of what remembering really means. They say grief changes you. They're right. But not in the ways people expect. It's not all sadness and long stares out the window. Sometimes it's laughing at a memory you forgot you had. Sometimes it's smelling gasoline and suddenly missing the way she'd curse at the lawnmower. Sometimes it's walking taller in a hallway that once felt hostile, not because people changed, but because you did. You stopped hiding. You started walking forward with her name in your steps. I passed the memorial wall again. A few students were standing there. One placed a single daisy under my mom's photo. Another tapped the frame and said softly, "Her daughter's a beast in history class, you know." I grinned. Walked away. Didn't say a word. I didn't have to. She spoke for herself now. That weekend I sat with the box again. The one with her shirt, the letter, the medal, the folded flag. I added one more thing to it. The pin Captain Briggs gave me, the one that says "Daughter of Melissa Tran." And then I whispered aloud, "You did it, Mom. You reached them." No one heard me. Except maybe the wind outside the window. Or maybe she did. The second Veterans Day came quieter than the first. No helicopter, no marching band, no sudden announcement over the PA system that made the school freeze. Just a cold morning. And me, standing in front of my closet holding the shirt. I hadn't worn it since the ceremony. I didn't need to not every day. But today was different. The rip at the shoulder was still there. I hadn't stitched it shut. Mom would have rolled her eyes if I did. Scars don't ruin things, she used to say. They prove they've been through something. So I wore it just like that. Unfixed. Unapologetic. Whole in its own broken way. When I stepped onto the school bus, no one said a word. But a few nodded. One kid who once sent me a fake sympathy meme stood up and gave me his seat. The driver didn't even ask me for my ID, just said, "Glad you're with us this morning, Miss Tran." The seat was cold, but I didn't feel it. My mom's shirt had always been warm enough. That day I was invited to speak again. This time it wasn't at the district level, just our school. Simple, small. A student-led assembly in the gym. Folding chairs, flags taped to the walls, a slideshow with music that lagged every few seconds. But it felt more honest somehow. Closer. I stood at the same podium where people used to announce lost phones and bake sales. And I spoke. Not to impress. Not to relive grief, but to share. My mom used to say the world doesn't remember your medals. It remembers how you made people feel. I paused. Looked out across the bleachers. Some were watching, some weren't. But a few just enough had that look. The look people get when they're ready to listen. I used to wish I had more than this shirt. Her dog tags, her boots, something official. But now I understand the most important thing that came back was the story. My hand rested lightly on the fabric at my chest. The last thing she wore wasn't body armor, it was this. Whispers in the crowd, not mockery, curiosity, respect. She didn't die for a flag, or a medal, or a number in a report. She died saving someone else, and I'm here because of who she was, not how she left. I took a breath, let it settle, and then finished with the words I'd memorized even before I could admit I believed them. My name is Mai Tran. My mother was First Lieutenant Melissa Tran. She was loud in the kitchen, brave in the field, and impossible to forget. I wear this shirt not because I lost her, but because I carry her. Silence. Then one clap. Then two. Then a quiet wave of hands meeting palms, not loud, not showy, just enough. And it meant the world. Afterward, a 6th grader handed me a drawing. Stick figures. A girl with long black hair and a woman in a green shirt. Above their heads, my hero is my mom. I looked at the kid. "Is that your mom?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, yours." Outside it started to rain, light at first, then steady. But no one ran for cover. They just stood quietly watching the flags flap in the wind, as if even the sky wanted to pause. That night I visited her grave again. I hadn't been back in months. Not because I forgot, but because grief doesn't always take the shape of flowers and tears. Sometimes it looks like showing up, speaking up, living loud. Like she did. I placed the drawing from the 6th grader beside the headstone. Then the pin. Then a small note I had folded in my pocket. We remember. Every day. Not just when it's written on the calendar. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because she'd always said, if they still say your name, you're not really gone. And lately, her name was everywhere. These days people ask if I'll join the military. I'm not sure yet. But I know this. Whatever I do, wherever I go, I'll carry her. In my spine, in my voice, in how I treat people. And yes, sometimes in the shirt I still wear. Because memory isn't quiet. It breathes. It speaks. It shows up. So if you're hearing my voice now and you've ever lost someone who wore a uniform, I hope this story brings them back to you even for a moment. Say their name, wear their memory, and never let anyone mock what survives. Because survival isn't weakness. It's proof. And if this story moved, you share it with someone who remembers. Or say a name you haven't said out loud in a while. Let them know you haven't forgotten. And neither have we.